when they disappear. No tears for black girls, like they were never here. But we remember, we'll speak their names.
Welcome back to No Tears for Black Girls, the podcast that investigates the forgotten cases of missing and murdered Black women systematically overlooked by mainstream media and law enforcement. I'm your guest host today, Nia Davis from the YouTube channel That's Hot, sitting in for our incredible host, Samantha Paul. For those who are new to this space, No Tears for Black Girls isn't just another true crime podcast. This is a movement. This is where we shine a spotlight on the stories that deserved headlines but never received them. From domestic violence survivors to trafficking victims, we examine the institutional barriers that silence Black women's tragedies. Now, you might be wondering why I'm here today talking about Sean Diddy Combs when this podcast typically focuses on missing and murdered Black women. But here's the thing. This case is about Black women. It's about Cassie Ventura, Dawn Richard, and the countless other Black women whose voices were silenced by power, money, and influence. Today's episode is different because we're not just talking about women who've been forgotten by the system. We're talking about women who were allegedly systematically abused by one of the most powerful men in our community. And that intersection of power, race, and gender-based violence, that's exactly what this podcast was created to address. So, buckle up, because we're about to dive deep into the scandal that's got Hollywood shaking, the music industry trembling, and social media absolutely losing its mind. This isn't just celebrity gossip. This is a federal case with more twists than a soap opera and more evidence than a CSI episode. We're talking about Sean Diddy Combs, the man who built an empire worth nearly $1 billion, only to watch it crumble faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. But more importantly, we're talking about the Black women who found the courage to speak truth to power, despite knowing the cost. And y'all, as a Black woman in media myself, I understand the unique challenges these women face. When you're going up against someone with Diddy's level of power and influence, you're not just fighting one man. You're fighting an entire system designed to protect him and silence you. So today, we're going to center their voices. We're going to examine how the entertainment industry's power structures enabled alleged decades of abuse. And we're going to connect this case to the broader patterns of violence against Black women that this podcast has been documenting since day one. Because at the end of the day, whether we're talking about a missing woman in Atlanta whose case got buried, or a famous singer trapped in an abusive relationship with a mogul, the common thread is the same. Black women's pain is often invisible, their voices are often silenced, and their stories are often forgotten. But not today, not on this platform. Today, we remember. Today, we listen. Today, we demand accountability. So, grab your notebooks, cancel your plans, and prepare yourself for a deep dive into power, predation, and the price of silence. This is Empire of Shadows, the Sean Diddy Combs investigation, and we're about to spill all the tea while keeping our focus where it belongs, on the survivors. Let's start from the beginning, because every empire has an origin story, and understanding how Sean Combs built his power is crucial to understanding how he allegedly used it to harm Black women. Sean John Combs, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Just Diddy, whatever he was calling himself that week, started as an intern at Uptown Records. And honey, this man had vision. He wasn't just trying to make music. He was trying to build a multimedia empire that would make him untouchable. And in many ways, he succeeded. Bad Boy Entertainment launched the careers of Biggie, Faith Evans, 112, and so many others. The Sean John clothing line brought hip-hop fashion to the mainstream. That Ciroc partnership had him making more money than some small countries. Now, I want to be clear. As Black people, we celebrated Diddy's success. We were proud to see a Black man build an empire, create opportunities, and change the culture. But what we're learning now is that behind that success, behind those white parties in the Hamptons and those inspirational speeches about Black excellence, there was allegedly something much darker happening. Because while Diddy was building this public empire of success and glamour, federal prosecutors now say he was running something else entirely behind the scenes. According to the feds, and we're talking about the federal government here, not some gossip blog, Diddy allegedly used his legitimate businesses as a front for what they're calling a criminal enterprise. A criminal enterprise, y'all. They're saying Bad Boy Entertainment wasn't just a record label. It was allegedly the headquarters for decades of abuse, trafficking, and intimidation. And the primary victims? Black women who trusted him with their dreams, their careers, and their lives. This is where the story gets really dark, because we're not just talking about a rich man's weird habits. We're talking about alleged systematic abuse that prosecutors say went on for decades, with Black women bearing the brunt of the violence and exploitation. And this is exactly why No Tears for Black Girls exists. Because when Black women are harmed, even by powerful Black men, their stories often get buried under narratives about bringing down successful Black men or airing dirty laundry. But we're not here for that. We're here for the truth. And the truth is that Black women deserve protection, even from, especially from, the most powerful people in our community. Now, before we dive into the salacious details that have everyone talking, we need to do what mainstream media often fails to do: center the voices that matter most. The Black women who found the courage to speak truth to power, knowing full well the cost they would pay. Let's start with Cassie Ventura. Y'all remember Cassie, Me and You, that ethereal voice, that stunning beauty. She was just 19 when Diddy discovered her, 19 years old with dreams of stardom, and according to her lawsuit, what she got instead was a decade-long nightmare that reads like a horror movie script. November 2023, Cassie filed a federal lawsuit that changed everything. She alleged that Diddy physically abused her, forced her into sexual encounters with male prostitutes while he watched and recorded and controlled every aspect of her life for 10 years. 10 years of her life, y'all. Her 20s. The time when she should have been building her career, finding herself, living her dreams. The lawsuit described something called freak-offs, and I'm going to keep this as appropriate as possible while still honoring Cassie's truth. Essentially, she alleged that Diddy would force her to have sex with male escorts while he directed and recorded everything, for days at a time, with drugs and alcohol to keep everyone compliant. But here's what really gets to me, and what connects this to every story we tell on No Tears for Black Girls. Cassie said she stayed silent for years because she was financially dependent on him. Her career was in his hands, and she was genuinely afraid. Can you imagine being trapped like that? Having your dreams, your livelihood, your very safety held hostage by your abuser? And then, in May 2024, CNN leaked surveillance footage from 2016 that validated everything Cassie had been saying. Y'all, I watched that video of Diddy chasing Cassie down a hotel hallway in just a towel, throwing her to the ground, kicking her repeatedly and dragging her by her hair. It was absolutely sickening. This is the pattern we see over and over again on this podcast. Black women telling their truth, being called liars, and then evidence emerging that proves they were right all along. How many times do we have to watch this play out before we start believing Black women the first time they speak? But Cassie wasn't alone, and that's important to understand. Dawn Richard from Danity Kane came forward with her own allegations. This woman had the courage to say she witnessed Diddy's alleged abuse of Cassie firsthand, seeing her with bruises and black eyes, watching the psychological manipulation in real time. And then the floodgates opened. Attorney Tony Busby announced he was representing over 120 accusers. 120 people, including 25 who were minors at the time of the alleged incidents. One accuser was allegedly just 9 years old. 9 years old. This is why this podcast exists. This is why we can't let these stories get buried under celebrity gossip and industry politics. We're talking about alleged crimes against children, against young women who trusted a powerful man with their dreams and their bodies. Every single one of these accusers, from Cassie to the anonymous Jane Does, made a choice to speak up knowing they would face character assassination, legal battles, and threats to their safety. That takes incredible courage, and their voices deserve to be heard, believed, and centered in this conversation. July 2025 will go down in history as the month that changed everything. After months of anticipation, Sean Combs finally faced a jury of his peers in federal court in Manhattan. 7 weeks of testimony, 34 witnesses, evidence that had the courtroom gasping and the internet spiraling. The prosecution came with everything, y'all. They had Cassie on the stand, and let me tell you, watching a black woman have to relive her trauma in front of the world, knowing she would be picked apart and questioned and blamed, that took strength that most of us can't even imagine. They had Jane, another alleged victim, describing years of abuse. They had Kid Cudi, yes, the rapper, testifying that Diddy allegedly had his car blown up with a Molotov cocktail because he was dating Cassie. A Molotov cocktail, y'all? Like we're in some kind of mafia movie. But here's where it gets really powerful. The prosecution played that hotel surveillance video in court. The entire courtroom watched Diddy chase Cassie down that hallway, throw her to the ground, and kick her repeatedly. Jurors were visibly disturbed. Some couldn't even watch, and this is important because for years people questioned Cassie's story. They said she was lying, that she was trying to get money, that she was bitter about their relationship ending. But that video didn't lie. That video showed the world exactly what black women have been trying to tell y'all for decades, that abuse doesn't discriminate based on wealth or fame. For 7 weeks, we heard testimony about freak-offs that could last for days, about intravenous fluids being used to help victims recover, about recordings being made without consent and used as blackmail, about a culture of fear and intimidation that allegedly permeated every aspect of Diddy's empire. And then came the verdict. July 2nd, 2025. The courtroom was packed. The world was watching. And after just over 2 days of deliberation, the jury delivered a split decision that nobody saw coming. Not guilty of racketeering conspiracy, the big RICO charge that could have put him away for life. Not guilty of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, but guilty of transportation to engage in prostitution on 2 counts. Y'all, the courtroom erupted. Diddy literally fell to his knees in prayer. His family was cheering and applauding. He mouthed, "I'm coming home," to his loved ones. But the celebration was short-lived. Judge Aaron Subramanian denied bail, citing Diddy's propensity for violence and keeping him locked up until sentencing. He's facing up to 20 years in prison, and his sentencing is set for October 3rd, 2025. Now, I know some people are disappointed that he wasn't convicted on all charges. But let me tell you something. The fact that Cassie and these other black women were believed enough to get any convictions is significant. The fact that their testimonies were taken seriously by a federal jury is progress. Now, here's what really gets me about this whole situation. And what connects it directly to the mission of No Tears for Black Girls? The culture of silence that allegedly allowed this to go on for decades. We're not talking about a few isolated incidents. Prosecutors say this pattern of behavior went back to at least 2008, but some allegations go back even further. So, where was everybody? Where were the industry executives who allegedly knew what was happening? Where were the celebrities who attended these parties and saw the transition from family-friendly to something else? Where were the employees who allegedly helped facilitate these crimes? The answer is simple. They were protecting their access, their careers, their relationships with power. And this is the same dynamic we see in every case we cover on this podcast. When Black women are being harmed, the system closes ranks to protect the perpetrator, not the victim. According to party photographer Selma Fonseca, who attended 20 to 30 Diddy parties, there was a clear pattern. She said the parties would start innocent, families, children, celebrities taking cute photos. But then there would be a transition. Parents would be warned to take their children and leave. The atmosphere would shift from family-friendly to something else entirely. So, you're telling me that all these A-list celebrities were at these parties, saw this transition happening, and nobody said anything? Nobody thought it was weird? Nobody questioned what was happening after they left? Nobody thought to check on the young women who stayed behind? This is exactly the kind of willful blindness that allows Black women to be harmed with impunity. It's the same energy that lets missing Black women cases go cold, that allows domestic violence to escalate unchecked, that enables trafficking to flourish in our communities. And let's talk about the industry's response now that everything has come to light. All these celebrities who used to post about Diddy constantly, who called him a mentor, who attended his parties religiously, are now acting like they never knew the man. Funny how people develop amnesia when the feds come knocking, isn't it? But this silence isn't just about protecting careers. It's about protecting a system that has always prioritized powerful men over vulnerable women, especially Black women. And that's the real tragedy here. How many other Cassies were there? How many other Dawn Richards? How many Black women suffered in silence because they knew nobody would believe them over Sean Combs? The industry knew. The executives knew. The celebrities knew. And they chose their comfort, their access, their business relationships over the safety of Black women. That's not just complicity. That's active participation in a system of abuse. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the celebrity connections that have everyone talking, because Diddy didn't operate in a vacuum, and the guest list at his parties read like a who's who of Hollywood and the music industry. We're talking about Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lopez, Kim Kardashian, Paris Hilton, Sarah Jessica Parker, Ashton Kutcher, all photographed at these infamous white parties. But here's what has me and everyone else asking questions. What did these celebrities know, and when did they know it? And then came the bombshell that nobody saw coming. December 2024, Jay-Z, Sean Carter himself, gets named in a civil lawsuit alongside Diddy. An anonymous woman alleged that both men sexually assaulted her when she was 13 years old at a 2000 VMAs after party. 13 years old at a VMAs after party with two of the most powerful men in hip-hop. Jay-Z came out swinging, calling it a blackmail attempt and demanding the accuser reveal her identity. But the damage was done. The conspiracy theories exploded. And this is where it gets really problematic for our community. Because now we have to grapple with the possibility that multiple powerful Black men we celebrated, men we held up as examples of success, may have been harming Black women and children. Social media went absolutely wild. People started connecting dots that may or may not exist. Jay-Z and Beyonce's silence about the Diddy situation suddenly seemed suspicious. Why haven't they said anything? What do they know? Are they next? And don't even get me started on the Usher situation. This man was Diddy's protege, lived with him as a teenager, and has been suspiciously quiet about this whole scandal. Usher even deleted all his tweets, all of them, right around the time the Diddy news broke. Coincidence? I think not. Then there's Justin Bieber, who was discovered by Usher and spent time with Diddy as a teenager. There are old videos of teenage Justin hanging out with Diddy that hit different now. People are rewatching these clips with new eyes, and let me tell you, the comments section is not having it. But here's what's really telling: the silence. All these celebrities who used to post about Diddy constantly, who called him a mentor, who attended his parties religiously, are now acting like they never knew the man. Funny how people develop amnesia when the feds come knocking, isn't it? Okay, let's talk about the evidence that had the entire internet making memes while simultaneously being horrified. Y'all, when the feds announced they found over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant at Diddy's properties, social media lost its collective mind. 1,000 bottles? Like, who needs that much baby oil? Was he planning to open a spa? Was he preparing for the apocalypse? The memes were endless, and 50 Cent, bless his petty heart, had a field day trolling Diddy about it. But prosecutors say this wasn't funny. They say these supplies were used during those alleged freak-offs that could last for days. Days, y'all, with participants needing IV fluids to recover. What kind of activities require medical intervention to recover from? But the baby oil wasn't even the worst of it. The feds also found multiple AR-15 rifles with defaced serial numbers, large quantities of drugs including cocaine and methamphetamine, and recording equipment. This wasn't just a rich man's party supplies. This was allegedly the infrastructure for a criminal enterprise. And speaking of recording equipment, let's talk about what prosecutors say was really happening at these parties. According to the indictment, Diddy allegedly recorded these freak-offs without consent and used the footage as blackmail. Blackmail to keep people quiet, to maintain control, to ensure loyalty. Can you imagine being in that position? Having your most vulnerable moments recorded without your knowledge, then having that footage held over your head for years? The psychological torture of that is unimaginable, and it's exactly the kind of manipulation that keeps Black women trapped in abusive situations. But wait, there's more? Even while locked up in Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center, prosecutors say Diddy couldn't stop himself from allegedly trying to obstruct justice. This man was allegedly using other inmates' phone access codes to make unauthorized calls, paying inmates to use their phone privileges, and orchestrating social media campaigns through his family to influence potential jurors. The audacity! You're in federal prison facing decades behind bars, and you're still trying to manipulate the system? Sir, this is not the time for your usual control tactics. They found notes in his jail cell detailing these schemes. Notes! This man wrote down his alleged witness tampering plans like he was making a grocery list. The level of arrogance is absolutely stunning. Now, let's talk about the impact this case has had beyond just Sean Combs. Because when a figure this powerful falls, the shockwaves are felt throughout the entire industry and our community. First, let's talk about the business consequences. Diddy's empire is crumbling in real time. The C-Rock partnership is reportedly under review. Revolt TV is facing advertiser boycotts. His real estate values are plummeting. The Bad Boy Records catalog is potentially devalued. Decades of wealth building gone. But more importantly, this case has forced the entertainment industry to confront some uncomfortable truths about how it operates. The power dynamics, the exploitation of young artists, the culture of silence around abuse, all of it is being examined under a microscope. And that's good. That's necessary. Because for too long, the industry has operated like the Wild West, with powerful men doing whatever they wanted to vulnerable people, especially Black women, with no consequences. This case has also sparked important conversations within hip-hop culture about the glorification of certain behaviors, the intersection of wealth, power, and accountability, how successful artists have a responsibility to younger generations, how the culture can evolve to better protect vulnerable individuals. And you know what gives me hope? The survivor support movement that has emerged from this case. New organizations focus specifically on entertainment industry abuse, specialized attorneys and legal aid for survivors, trauma-informed therapy for industry professionals, advocacy efforts, lobbying for stronger protections. This is exactly what No Tears for Black Girls has been advocating for. Comprehensive support systems for survivors, accountability for perpetrators, and systemic changes to prevent future harm. So, where do we go from here? Because while Diddy's conviction on 2 counts is significant, the fight for justice is far from over. We have over 100 civil lawsuits still pending. We have other powerful figures who may be implicated. We have an entire industry that needs to be reformed. But most importantly, we have survivors who need our continued support. Cassie, Dawn Richard, and all the anonymous accusers who found the courage to speak up, they need to know that their voices mattered, that their courage created change, that their pain was not in vain. And that's where we come in. As consumers, as fans, as members of the community, we have power. We can choose which artists to support. We can demand accountability from record labels. We can create safer spaces for young artists. We can believe Black women when they tell us they've been harmed. Because at the end of the day, that's what No Tears for Black Girls is all about. Making sure that Black women's stories are heard, their pain is acknowledged, and their lives are valued. Whether we're talking about a missing woman whose case went cold or a famous singer trapped in an abusive relationship, the message is the same. Black women matter. The Sean Combs case isn't just about one man's alleged crimes. It's about a system that enabled those crimes. It's about a culture that silenced the victims. It's about power structures that protected the perpetrator over the survivors. But it's also about the courage of Black women who refuse to stay silent. It's about the power of truth to eventually surface. It's about the possibility of justice, even when it's delayed. It's about the hope that we can build a better, safer world for the next generation of Black women. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to take a moment to center the survivors once more. Cassie Ventura, who found the courage to break her silence after a decade of alleged abuse. Dawn Richard, who risked her career to corroborate Cassie's story. The 120-plus accusers represented by Tony Busby, including those who were children when they were allegedly harmed. These women and survivors didn't have to speak up. They could have stayed silent, protected their privacy, avoided the character assassination and legal battles that come with accusing powerful men. But they chose to speak their truth, knowing it might help others, knowing it might prevent future harm. And that's the spirit of No Tears for Black Girls. The belief that every Black woman's story matters, that every survivor deserves to be heard, that justice delayed is not justice denied. The Sean Combs case will continue to unfold. There will be appeals, more civil lawsuits, probably more revelations. But what won't change is our commitment to centering Black women's voices, to demanding accountability, and to fighting for a world where Black women are safe, valued, and believed. So, to Cassie, to Dawn, to all the survivors who may be listening, thank you. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your truth. Thank you for showing other Black women that their voices matter, that their stories deserve to be told, that they are not alone, And speaking of survivors finding their voice and reclaiming their power, we have something special for you as we close out today's episode. Coming up next, we're going to play Phoenix Rising, Cassie's song, Cassie Ventura's powerful anthem about her journey, her trials and tribulations dealing with Sean Diddy Combs, and her rise from the ashes of that experience. This song represents everything we've been talking about today. The courage to speak truth to power, the strength to survive trauma, and the determination to reclaim your narrative. Because that's what survivors do. They rise. They transform their pain into power, their trauma into testimony, their silence into song. And Cassie's voice, her truth, her music, that's her Phoenix Rising. So, as we transition into this beautiful tribute to survival and strength, I want to leave you with the words that Samantha Paul always uses to close our episodes, because they capture the spirit of what we're trying to build here, a community of love, protection, and support for Black women everywhere. Stay loved, stay blessed, stay safe. This has been No Tears for Black Girls. I'm Nia Davis from Datsot, and now here's Cassie Ventura with Phoenix Rising, Cassie's song.
Young girl from Connecticut with stars in her eyes, modeling at 15, runway dreams taking flight. Then music called my name, me and you hit the charts. 19 years old, didn't know it would tear me apart. Bad boy deal, 10 albums long. How could I know something would go so wrong? Rising from the ashes of what used to be, breaking through the chains that once controlled me. Years in the shadows now, stepping into light. This phoenix is rising, taking back her life. Taking back her life. Number 3 on Billboard, the world at my feet, but behind closed doors my reality wasn't sweet. Power and control, masters industry love. Years passing by with my career held above. Songs recorded that never saw the day. My voice silenced in so many ways. 11 years trapped in a cycle of pain, praying every night I'd find strength to break away. Now I stand in my truth, no longer afraid. Found love that's real, found myself again. My daughter saved me, showed me what matters most. This isn't just survival, this is my rebirth. 2023, I finally told my truth. The world finally heard what I went through. Settlement signed, but freedom worth more than gold. My story isn't finished, just beginning to unfold. A husband who loves me, 2 daughters to raise, finding peace and healing after all these days. The music inside me still waiting to flow. This time on my terms, my voice, my show. Phoenix rising, watch me soar. No longer defined by what came before. Phoenix rising, this is my song. The journey was brutal.